People who I interviewed, years later, who one man, his job was to show up at the school at 4 a.m. so he could make toast for 250 airline passengers from Germany who were still on another European time zone. So they started making breakfast early at 4 a.m. These wonderful, simple things that were so kind. And I wondered when I went back to where I lived in Austin, Texas, would a small town there, would they do the same? And I wasn't sure. And so that's why on the first anniversary of 9/11, I closed the doors of my small business. We had about 40 people, and I handed out $100 bills to teams of 2 people and told them, go out into the community and remind people that we said we would never forget the lives that were lost on 9/11, and then to tell what happened on this better side of humanity that their boss experienced. So they told the story of Gander. So they went out and I told them, use the $100 however you want, and then come back and let's talk about it. And so it became our staff's favorite activity of the year. And because people really learn in how important it is to engage. Now, even 23 years later of doing this, we're all so addicted to staring down at our phones, and
What are you talking
so
about?
that's what someone said. They were like, oh, well, I stepped in to buy someone's coffee at a Starbucks, and I realized we don't look at each other anymore in the eyes. And so you have these powerful, simple moments that, sometimes they cost a couple bucks, sometimes they can be free, just saying good morning to somebody who's a stranger. And so, because I was a stranger, that's the kindness to strangers is the part of what I really wanted to encourage.
Welcome to the Kindness Factor podcast, sharing life-changing personal stories of the transformational impact of deep kindness. Hosted by
Dr. Ilya, the happiness doctor,
and Randy McNeely, the kindness giver. Thank you for joining us. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to another episode of the Kindness Factor podcast. I'm Randy McNeely, known as the kindness giver. And my wonderful co-host, Dr. Ilya Gorgoras, is off over in Greece at a conference, having more fun than anybody ought to be allowed. And so you get to listen to me. And I am thrilled today to have in the house and on the show with me a wonderful man by the name of Kevin Tuerff. And I want to share with you just a little bit about Kevin. Kevin is the communications director and the managing director, I should say, for the American Thoracic Society. He leads the marketing and communications for them. But he's also more interesting. He's the founder, not more interesting, but more importantly, he's the founder of an amazing organization called Pay It Forward 9/11. Kevin's experience on 9/11, he was on a plane when 9/11 happened. And along with a whole bunch of other passengers, he got diverted to an amazing place called Gander, Newfoundland. And that experience, when he was stranded as a passenger there, inspired him to develop and create this wonderful organization, Pay It Forward 911, back in 2002. And it's been growing ever since then. Today, he serves as the founder and volunteer president of Pay It Forward 911 Inc. His 9/11 story is one of the true stories inspiring the Tony Award-winning Broadway musical Come From Away. The character Kevin T is referred to as the compassionate gay lumberjack in the show, and is the Pay It Forward 9/11 effort is mentioned in the script of the musical. He has been featured in multiple documentaries. In 2018, the House of Anizani published his memoir book called Channel of Peace, Stranded in Gander 911. A portion of the proceeds for that wonderful book go to helping nonprofit organizations which are helping refugees. Kevin currently works for the American Thoracic Society, and he's a TEDx speaker. He's a certified virtual e-presenter, and he's an all-around amazing man. Kevin, thank you so much for joining
Randy,
us.
thank you, Randy. It's wonderful to be here.
I sure appreciate Kevin. My goodness, I was reading a bit about what happened in Gander and a little bit about your book, and I'm not going to spoil it for our audience. I'm going to ask you to tell us a little bit about that. But first, every week when we have our guests come on, the first thing we ask is, can you think of a kindness hero, someone who stands out, someone who stepped up and did something for you that touched your heart, changed your life, and still impacts you today. Now, in your case, you could probably you may have a hard time picking somebody because of all the amazing kindness that was shown to you. But why don't you tell our audience a little bit about Gander and some of the experiences there, or whatever else you would like with regards to somebody being a kindness hero?
Yeah. So in my case, there were about 9,000 people who were kind to me and about 7,000 other stranded passengers in the small town of Gander, Newfoundland, a province in Canada. On 9/11, that terrible day, that tragedy in 2001, I was on a plane, as you mentioned, flying from Paris, France into New York City when the US airspace was shut down. And I saw on the GPS map, we were flying at least a couple hours away from landing. We were over the ocean, but all of a sudden our plane started descending, which is not a great feeling when you know that we're not supposed to. Then a sharp bank up to the north, and I look on the ceiling, there was a monitor of the GPS, and it looked like we were flying to the North Pole. And the pilot came on the PA and said, first in French, a bunch of words, but then said the word terrorism, and then came on in English and said, due to a terrorist attack in the United States, we'll be landing in Gander. And that's it. And so we didn't know what that meant or anything. I didn't even know what country Gander was in. It's part of the wonderful country of Canada. It's an island in the North Atlantic Ocean. And this small town, they had a giant runway. So it was a great place to park airplanes that couldn't go back. They didn't have enough fuel to return around and fly back to Europe. So the small town of 9,000 people all of a sudden has 38 large jumbo jets with 7,000 people on them and a small airport that could barely fit one plane load of people. So we had to sit on those planes for 15 hours, 15 to 28 hours in some cases.
Oh my word.
Yes. And so
Long
the
time.
next time you want to complain about your flight delay, you give me a call. So what was as I talk about the connection to kindness, I like to draw this analogy of kindness, empathy, and compassion. Now, if the people in this town wanted to be kind, they could have sent thoughts and prayers, as we often do on social media. But if they wanted to have some empathy for us being stuck on the planes, they could have just sent out some boxes of pizza and some water and kept us fed. But ultimately, when I was writing my book, I interviewed the mayor. I said, "You decided to let us into your community. You opened your borders, your schools, your churches, your homes. People allowed strangers to take a shower in their homes. Why did you do that?" And the mayor, Claude Elliott, he said, "We weren't going to let you rot on these planes. People need help. You help them." So that's compassion. It's kindness. It's where kindness becomes engaging in the suffering of others. It's one of my favorite definitions of compassion. And so, the things that were incredible. They gave us food, clothing, shelter, information, love at a time when we really needed it. And I got a glimpse of what it's like to be a refugee when you have to rely on the kindness of others for all of your basic needs.
My goodness. You sit and think about that, and there's so many different amazing things that happen on multiple levels there. You think about it, those people, they saw you. And what I mean by that is they didn't see you as a burden. They didn't see you as objects. They saw you as people, people who were stranded, people who couldn't get home to their loved ones, people who, in many cases, I think I read on your website there was like people from 90 countries there,
That's right.
and I'm sure you have to wonder how many of them didn't speak English,
Many.
and all yet what was it that transcended all of those differences, even the fact that people didn't speak the same language, the love, the kindness, the compassion that was shown.
Yeah, and food. That was one thing we all needed, and everybody, there wasn't a stove in that town that wasn't operating, making food for strangers. People who I interviewed, years later, who one man, his job was to show up at the school at 4 a.m. so he could make toast for 250 airline passengers from Germany who were still on another European time zone. So they started making breakfast early at 4 a.m. These wonderful, simple things that were so kind. And I wondered when I went back to where I lived in Austin, Texas, would a small town there, would they do the same? And I wasn't sure. And so that's why on the first anniversary of 9/11, I closed the doors of my small business. We had about 40 people, and I handed out $100 bills to teams of 2 people and told them go out into the community and remind people that we said we would never forget the lives that were lost on 9/11, and then to tell what happened on this better side of humanity that their boss experienced. So they told the story of Gander. So they went out and I told them, use the $100 however you want, and then come back and let's talk about it. And so it became our staff's favorite activity of the year. And because people really learn in how important it is to engage. Now, even 23 years later of doing this, we're all so addicted to staring down at our phones, and
What are you talking about?
so that's what someone said. They were like, oh, well, I stepped in to buy someone's coffee at a Starbucks, and I realized we don't look at each other anymore in the eyes. And so you have these powerful, simple moments that, sometimes they cost a couple bucks, sometimes they can be free, just saying good morning to somebody who's a stranger. And so, because I was a stranger, that's the kindness to strangers is the part of what I really wanted to encourage. And I thought, Canadians don't have a lock on this. We can do the same. And we are all human beings, and we're all meant to help each other when we need it.
You know, you trigger so many thoughts in my head. One of the beautiful things is you had that experience almost, over 20 years ago, right? It's been 23 years, 24 years, 23 years since that happened. And yet, think about the fact that it still impacts you today almost as much as it did then. And I read on an article, and you talked about somebody that shared an experience with you, and I can't remember what it was now, but you talked about how you even thinking about it now. It's been 17 years later, and I still get choked up. Oh, you talked about the gentleman who called you at the end of that first day, or sent you an email, or called you. His name was Vincent, and he
Oh, yes.
and he let he's having an awful day, and somebody, from your office stopped and helped him take care of a flat tire and then paid for it. And I can guarantee you he still remembers that.
I think so. Yeah. And he called me and left me a voicemail at my back when we had voicemail. He left
Yeah.
me a voicemail and he said uh, that, having a terrible day. And I went to go pay to have my flat tire fixed. And he said, no, someone's done it for you. It's about 9/11 to never forget. And if you want, you can pay it forward. And so he said, I want you to know, and he kept choked up. What happened changed my life. And wow, and I hung up the phone. I've never spoken to Vincent. I didn't leave a phone number, but him telling me that and kept me inspired to keep up this annual tradition of doing 3 good deeds for strangers around September 11th. Now our charity, we've expanded that to be 11 days of kindness, and we have people in last year and this year, more than 40 to 50 states and 15 other countries have joined in thanks to this musical Come From Away, because people are now more aware of it and they like it and they want to participate in it. It is a national day of service and remembrance in the US and Canada, but often, even though we said we'd never forget, sadly, we're forgetting.
Well, and that unfortunately, unless you have a lot of people that are constantly reminding you, we have a tendency as human beings to forget. And so that's why it's so amazing and wonderful that you're doing what you're doing, because we're trying hard to help people not to forget. Obviously the name of this show is The Kindness Factor, and my co-host and I and a whole host of other people are huge kindness advocates, and we're right there with you, working in the same heart space recognizing the fact that, that there's never been a greater need for love in this world than there is now. And how do you deliver that? Well, you deliver it through kindness. Kindness is love in action. I mean, that's what it is. Every behavior, this is my definition of kindness. It's every behavior by which we show value and appreciation for other people is embraced by kindness. And the reality is, every time we go out and do something kind, we add to the sum of happiness in the world. We do.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people out there doing unkind things, which means they're subtracting from the sum of happiness. And so it's a lot of work. We have to, be willing to stand up and be bold and do those, speak out for being kind and inspire people to be kind in order to counter all the negativity that's out there. And, we can do it. And your story is a perfect example of how you can. The people going out and doing those things, what were they doing? They were creating experiences.
When a wallet was returned just moments after it was lost, a purpose was found. This one act of kindness inspired the formation of the nonprofit Kindness Worldwide to create a culture of kindness in communities throughout the world. Kindness Week Worldwide mobilized the entire community in York, Pennsylvania, featuring initiatives and playbook programs including blood drives, kindness cards, K-12 and college students embracing kindness, and an innovative means of community policing, kindness citations. If something so magical can happen in York, Pennsylvania, the same and other inspirations can happen anywhere and everywhere. Our Screen Scenes initiative featuring the Kindness Factor will showcase these many stories of kindness. Let's include your community among them. Kindness is the heartbeat of the world. Together, with your support, we can make all its hearts beat as one.
Experiences with kindness, which is what we need every day. Every one of us, we all need those experiences. Why? Because we need to feel love, right? So tell me how all those experiences with kindness that you have created over the years have impacted your life and how it's inspired you, why it's inspired you to continue to keep this going.
It really has. What's really interesting, and as I like you, I've studied a lot about kindness as well, and done a lot of talks about it. And the beautiful thing about our initiative is that it's up to, there's no prescribed way that you have to do the kindness. It's up to an individual. One school in Franklin, Tennessee this year, they committed to do 10,000 good deeds over the course of 11 days with all of their students. And they would write down little simple things like, I helped water the plants for my mom, or I sat with a new kid in the lunchroom. And then they put them on paper and they made this giant banner that said kindness. And now hangs on the wall of the school. So the kids have this reminder of how the little simple things add up to something really big that spells out as kindness.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great activity.
Yeah. So, especially now, here we are. It's hard to believe that it has been 23 years, but now there are actually teachers who are teaching school who were born after 9/11. And so they aren't familiar with the history of how it really changed life across the world and why it's created even ultimately some of these silos that we find ourselves in. And I'm a true believer that we can only break through some of these silos because some people will say like, oh, I'm kind to people that live in my neighborhood or people that go to my church or in my political party, but I can't, those other people, I don't know. And that's the problem. And the only way we can break through that, I think, is these one at a time interactions. And what I've found in my own experience is that it's not just in September when I think about this, is that I get this emotional reaction when you do this. It's called the helper's high. It's been studied that these chemicals fire off in your brain. I have just like a runner's high for several minutes after I do an act of kindness for someone. The recipient gets something out of it, but I get something great too. And so that helper's high, it makes you want to do it and become more open as you're just walking about your day to look for opportunities to keep that helper's high coming. And so the brain is a muscle. It needs to be trained. And one way to train it to feel better and have less stress, less anxiety is to do these random acts of kindness.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm going to throw something out there to you, just a thought. I don't believe in random acts of kindness. And what I mean by that is I think every time we're kind, we choose to be kind. What I do believe in is random opportunities to give kindness. We're all, as your people are going, or as I'm going throughout the day, I'm determined I'm going to do something kind for somebody. And I'm always on the lookout for an opportunity. And, looking out for, okay, when's an opportunity coming? Because I'm going to do something kind. If I can smile at somebody, or if I can hold the door for somebody or whatever. And that's a beautiful thing. I loved what you did, what the tradition you started is you're looking, people are on the lookout. You've got their kindness is top of mind because of, okay, I'm on the lookout. I've got to have an opportunity. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Oh, hey, there's somebody I can pay a coffee for or whatever. That's what's so beautiful about what you're doing and creating that something that people can engage in. Because when we put it top of mind, they're constantly looking. And you know what happens? And I'm sure you've experienced this. When we're on the lookout for opportunities to be kind, it's amazing how much we notice that we weren't noticing before. And the fact is, all those opportunities were there. We just weren't looking.
That's right. That's right.
And with everything that's going on in the world, of course, this being an election year in the United States, the divisiveness and the challenges that come. You talked about how some people say they're kind, but they're only kind to certain people. Well, in my mind, in reality, are they really kind? Because kindness doesn't know any barriers.
That's right.
Kindness, like I said, kindness is love in action, and love conquers all. And it doesn't matter if you're black or white, doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter if you're a Nebraska fan or a Michigan fan or an Iowa or Iowa State fan, whatever, doesn't matter. Love transcends those differences. Kindness, true kindness transcends those differences. We don't see each other with those labels. I don't see, oh, well, Kevin's from Texas. He's a Texan. I see Kevin as a brother, a man, a human who deserves to be loved, to be valued and appreciated. When we're really looking through the lens of kindness, if you will, and you're wearing glasses, you know what it's like to look through lenses. I'm supposed to be wearing my glasses. I'm not right now. But, when we look through the lens of kindness, that's how we see things. We see, opportunity. We're looking, we see people as people. Just like, I alluded to earlier, with people in Gander, they didn't see you as burdens. They didn't see, oh my gosh, our town's been flooded by all these people. What are we going to do?
Right.
No, they rolled up their sleeves. They got to work cooking and doing it, and they came out and said, hey, my fellow human beings, my fellow brothers, my fellow sisters, we know you're in need, and we're here to help you.
Yeah, what's amazing is that kindness wasn't just a one-day thing in this small town. As you can imagine, this is how they roll all the time. And so years later, when the musical starts to develop and I start writing my book and I went back to the town. I didn't go back for 10 years because it's hard to get there. It's a tiny airport on an island and it's expensive and it takes a long time. But I did go back, and then I'll never forget. One of my kindness heroes, his name is Mac Moss. So he was the college administrator of the community college, which was our refugee shelter, where I slept on the floor of a classroom. And he and his wife, I now call them my second parents, and I stay at their home whenever I go visit there. And they came to Texas to visit me, and so all because of this terrible tragedy, we've now developed this great bond. But one day he picked me up Mac picked me up at the airport, and he said, "Oh, if you don't mind, we have to stop and drop off something at this home." I said, "Sure. Well, what's going on?" He said, "Oh, well, our church, we've adopted a Syrian refugee family." And I was blown away. So within minutes, I'm talking to a Syrian refugee, one of 5 families that these 5 churches each adopted a family. And I'm now through Google Translate explaining to them, you are going to be well taken care of here. They took care of me. And it was just so beautiful. And so part of the proceeds of my book helped that organization, and they were able to bring in another family as a result of that. So,
That's
um,
fantastic.
yeah.
That's fantastic. Oh my goodness, Kevin, time has flown. I have to share something with you. I don't know what it is with people named Kevin, but they always want to do kind things. One of my strategic partners, my good friend, is his name is Kevin Smith, and he's also, interestingly, because of somebody's Good Samaritan act last year to him on Good Friday. Somebody returned his wallet when it was lost. He got home and they returned his wallet within a few minutes. Well, within 2 minutes after he got home, right when he was starting to panic, this lady drove 2.6 miles to get to where he was. And because of that one kind act, he was inspired to create an organization last year called Kindness Worldwide. And he's working to promote Kindness Week worldwide. So it's an interesting. His is 8 days. Your program is 11 days. The more people we have working to bring kindness in this world, the better. Thank you so much for all that you're doing, Kevin.
No,
And,
thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. It's wonderful to be with you all, and I hope to see you sometime.
well, I appreciate that. And okay, so let me, as a wrap up, normally what we'll do, we'll ask our guests, do you have maybe three little pearls of wisdom, a nugget related to kindness that you'd like to share with our audience? Anything that comes to mind?
Um, yeah, the number three is big for us because at Pay It Forward 9/11, we ask people to do three good deeds and then ask the recipients to do three more. So it creates that ripple effect. And it, what's amazing is one story of how my tradition was picked up by the producers of the Toronto cast that come from away. They gave $100 to an actor and stage manager who dipped into their own pocket and said, let's add our own hundreds. Now they got $300. They gave the $300 to a teacher at a school. The teacher goes and buys $300 of roses, gives them out to 100 kids. They put little messages on there. Remember 9/11, pay it forward, never forget. And then I hear the next day the story, the recap of one team, a young girl who said took her flower, went into a supermarket and saw a woman and said, oh, she looked like she was having a bad day. So I gave her the flower and she said, oh, how much for the flower? No, no, it's free. It's for pay it forward if you want to. And the woman started to cry. And she says, you have no idea how much this means to me. My daughter died yesterday. And then the girl goes back to school and writes an essay of how you never know what people are going through unless you talk to them.
So
So that was enough for me to keep going.
the three things I took away from that: one, go out and look for three simple things that you can do every day. Two, take the time to see people like that little girl did with the flower. And three, take the time to write it down. Write,
Yeah.
write down your experiences.
And share them. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, because you never know when, on a rainy day, I might be feeling kind of crummy. I can go back and look at that experience and get that helper's high again just by reading it, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah, that's great.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. We so appreciate you being here. Thank you to our audience. And like we do every week, I'm going to ask you to stop and take a few minutes and think about, what did I learn today? How is it applicable to me? And what am I going to do because of this? I can promise you that if you'll do that, you'll find good things to do. And I think you'll be inspired to go out and pay it forward and be kind. And as we say every week, remember to be kind, because with kindness, everybody wins. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
Thank you.